Hi, welcome to Third Space Live. I'm Jody Peel, and this is a show that offers conversations, ideas, and stories around building mental wellness. In a few moments, I'm going to be introducing guest, clinical counselor Ed Weiss, who's going to talk to us all about the modern adolescent journey. There's got to be a more fun title than that, but I guess you are a clinical counselor, Ed, so we'll stick with that for now. Learn more about Third Space Charity at thirdspacecanada.org. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram to learn more about our programs and services, as well as find out about shows that are coming up. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we have shows, and you can find the recordings of all previous shows on our YouTube channel or on Facebook and Instagram. Before we start, I want to say a quick thank you to Third Space Coffee, located in Landmark 2 in Kelowna, as they are a social enterprise, and they support our charity and all the great work we do. Today's June 16, 2020, and today is episode number 23. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart because I am the mother of twin teenage boys who are 17. So in some ways, today's teens and young adults, including my kids, seem so sophisticated and knowledgeable compared to previous generations, including my own. They have this giant breadth of knowledge. They are effortless in their use of technology, and they understand and participate in social and political issues that we never did. Although they're described as inclusive and often more virtuous than us, they're also too often described as lazy or entitled. So which is it? In exploring this, one important fact must be considered, and that teens are growing up in a way or on a timeline that's very different than previous generations. A study actually from San Diego University dug into this a little bit, and I was fascinated to learn some of the information they found out. The current young people, so when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about teens and young adults, young 20-year-olds. They have, compared to previous generations, a significant drop in alcohol use, a drop in sexual activity. They're less likely to drive or have an after-school job or to date than previous generations. And you know what's interesting is that the statistics are consistent across all populations and not influenced by race, gender, or location. So the results that all of this suggests that it's probably not that teens are lazy or entitled. It's probably just that they're not doing as many adult things as early as we did and previous generations have done. The conclusion seems to be that 25 is the new 18. And this is presenting unique and different challenges in terms of setting up young people for success and for making sure that they're emotionally healthy and get the support they need to be launched. So there's no better expert to talk to us about this than our guest tonight, Ed Weiss. Ed holds his master's degree in counseling. He has a master's degree in theology, and he also has his PhD in counseling. So he's one smart guy. He's also the director of Third Space Charity's Student Care Program, which supports post-secondary students by providing free counseling here in our community. Ed has been working with youth and young adults for over 35 years. That means you're getting old, Ed. Yeah, I can see him smiling in the back. Ed founded Reach Out Youth Ministries, a nonprofit organization that provides counseling and care to young people to help them navigate through this adolescent journey. Identity development is a major part of what Ed does. Ed has been effective in helping countless young people figuring out who they are and where they're going and why they're going there. Ed contributes to our community in so many ways, I can't even begin to touch on it. I haven't met anybody that meets Ed that isn't drawn to him and completely captivated by him, and I have the privilege of working beside him every day at work. So Ed, welcome. I'm going to unpin my image here. There we go. Welcome to the show, Ed, and thank you for joining us.
Well, my pleasure, Jody.
You look like you're in Amsterdam or Italy or something.
Yeah, I just made a quick trip across the pond, but I thought I'd like to keep my date with you on this interview.
Oh, that's kind of you, great. So why don't we start, Ed, with you helping us take us a walk down the adolescent journey, orient us to all of this.
All right. I think that it would be really important if you are listening to this podcast and you have a 20-year-old, you have a 17-year-old, you have a 21-year-old. I'm hoping this will help you get some context for what they are experiencing, what they're going through. I'm 60 years old. I was born in 1959. And my generation, as well as the boomers, I'm a boomer, but the builders especially, they went through adolescence in lightning speed, and they did that because they had to. All right. And so for them, being 16 years old, often 17 years old, they're already providing for themselves. They're getting married at 18 and 19. Again, I'm talking about the builders generation. Boomers were getting married as well in their late teens, early 20s. My generation was very common for us to be getting married at 20, 21, and 22. Often, partly we could do that because financially it was feasible. You know, a year at university was $3,000, and you can make that money in the summer and still be able to pay for your education. And so people were engaging in coming through adolescence much more quickly. Okay. Today, that same journey, something that, and I was a slow bloomer, Jody. Like, honestly, I was just slow on the uptake.
I was too.
And so I was probably experiencing maturity or self-actualization, which is a sense that I know who I am enough to be able to provide for a spouse, a partner, provide for my children, engage responsibly in a career. I was probably my 24, 23, when I got there. So I was slow to bloom, but the average person in my generation was taking about 6 years to come from puberty to the point of adulthood or self-actualization. Today, that journey looks more like 15 or 16 years.
Wow.
And the research I've seen indicates that it's getting longer and longer with every subsequent graduating class from high school. And so when we think of that, I love that adage, 25 is the new 18. Maybe what would be more telling is that 21 is the new 14. So for a lot of students, and our office that we have at the University of British Columbia, Okanagan, we have this never-ending demand for counseling, because here we have students who are in their third year, they're 21 years old, possibly going into their fourth year, and at so many levels, especially in terms of their ability to make decisions, these big lifelong decisions, they're really 14 years old. I don't know what you were like at 14, but I was not capable of making big decisions when I was 14 years old. And so developmentally, they're just not, even the frontal lobe is not completely developed at age of 21. Okay. And so some of this is not because they don't want to, it's just that they can't make big decisions. And yet what's interesting is the institution, post-secondary institution, so many institutions, look at them and demand that they make a decision, pick your major, figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. And they're asking that of somebody that is just not developed enough to be able to do that. Right.
Right.
And
I know that's a big focus of my kids' stress right now at nearing the end of high school, is they have to decide what they're supposed to figure out what they want to do the rest of their life. And that,
right.
Yeah, it's stressful and it's impossible.
It's infuriating. You know what, you ask them. And I always think it's funny. I've been to, a lot of high school graduations, and except for this year, the students will don their robes and walk across the stage, and the principal will announce, this is Bob, and Bob's going to be a rocket scientist. And this is Mary and she's going to be a doctor, and this is, and they've already chosen what they're going to do, but they don't have a foggy clue. They just wrote something down so they don't look stupid,
Right.
when they're walking across the stage. And I think to myself, how is it that the systems, like even our high schools, they're still being asked to make decisions that if 21 is 14, what is 17? At some level, I think what's happened is that the development actually goes along to a certain extent, but then gets retarded in late adolescence. I think that, and all research shows this, and that's why it takes you longer to get a license, because insurance companies know that you're giving a car to, just a full driver's license to a 16 or 17-year-old is a problem about to happen, correct?
Well, yeah, and it also, I noticed that how many young people today aren't in a big hurry to get their license. I spoke to that a little bit earlier, but that's such a difference even from my generation, because you couldn't wait till you were ready to have that, to get that independence.
Right.
And
right.
they seem so nonchalant about it. And what does that say?
And let's face it, these are brilliant young people.
Yes.
In so many ways, I think academically they've surpassed what other generations have done. They have access to so much information, okay, that they know how to process information. They just don't know how to process decision. They don't know how to process life. And because they're not adults, they don't have adult brains yet. And so they don't even have context for what it is to support a family, to pay insurance on your vehicle. They have no context for that. And that's got to be, I'm going to have to say that as parents, we have to take some responsibility for that.
Well, that's one thing I've noticed from working in our student care program and been privy to some of the stories, that you get a third-year engineering student that can run circles around us intellectually or scientifically, but has a panic attack because they don't know how to make a doctor's appointment for themselves, because they've never had to do that.
Never had to do that.
So that leads us into the elements that are contributing to this. Let's talk about that.
Let me tell you one more story that will just align with what you said. And if I've seen this once, I've seen it. Like, anxiety is the number one thing we treat at the university by far. And if these students aren't dealing with anxiety about their exams, which isn't as big of a concern when you think the context for this exam is my future. And we always present education, at least in terms of this will pave the way to your future. And so if I fail this exam, then I've failed my future. And that kind of messaging really, really messes with kids. But we've been giving them that message since junior high school and high school, when they're forced to figure out what major they want. And then they come to universities and they're told that if they, in order to actually be successful, to have a future, you have to jump through all these hoops. All this academic work is done. And they can't process this in terms of, boy, this is going to be helpful for me. They process it, I have to pass or else I forfeit a future. And that creates, and so they come to school going, there's a gun to their head, a proverbial gun, to their futures every time they write a paper, an exam. And their marks are in the hands of a professor. And so they're walking in and anxiety is running rampant for those reasons amongst them. So I had just outside of our offices here, I saw a student who I knew to be a prize student, an honor student, an incredible asset to the overall life of the university. And she had graduated in 4 years, which is actually in itself a feat. And it was a Saturday, and outside of our office building, I saw somebody sobbing sitting on the wall that just right outside my window. And I went out and I recognized her from the university. We came in, and here she had the maturity and the understanding of how to write exams, how to thrive in the context of academia. And she's out here in the world. She has no idea, absolutely no tools to know how to move forward in a career. She had an interview later that day and felt completely overwhelmed by the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing. And I thought, wow, that is such an interesting contrast, but we see it again and again. So how did we get here? That's the question you asked.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a simple answer to any of this, by the way. I think this is fairly complex. I think social scientists are understanding more about this maybe than are psychologists, because they're looking at all of the factors that influence this long journey, this painful journey. By the way, for those of you who are 60 years old, I don't know what puberty was like for you, but it was a very confusing journey for 6 years. Could you imagine being stuck in it for 20 or for 16 years? And so this is a hell of a run for these poor young people. In my mind, it's a very difficult run.
Yeah, so it's important to acknowledge that they're not choosing this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of the haters out there that are saying negative things about this generation, it's not fair. So, because there's big forces at play here that you're going to talk to us about.
And when you think about it, I don't know how many times I've heard this. The parents will talk to me about their kids and go, there are moments when my boy is a genius. My daughter is absolutely, I see the genius in them, followed by a junior high moment. How is that even possible? They don't understand it. And if you don't understand that their journey is different than our other generations, then you will wonder if they're all together, right? When you understand that this is very unique to any other generation before us, then you have to put those glasses on, or else you won't have compassion for your kids that are going through it. You won't have patience for it. And the truth of the matter is they will get there. They'll just get there on their own time, okay? There's a couple of answers that I'll submit that are really quite simple, but I think that they might suffice for the conversation, and it's a good conversation. Number one, they're slower to grow up because they don't have to grow up. They at least in North America here. By the way, this is not a phenomenon in third world countries. This is a phenomena to first world nations.
Yeah,
right?
The report that I referred to earlier talked about that, and I didn't dig into it, but there's a correlation obviously with wealth. That's a huge, powerful force, and I guess you're speaking to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first thing is if they don't have to grow up, why would they?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? And so, it's an interesting thing that when eagles prepare their nests, when the eggs hatch, the eagle's nest is, all the twigs are patted down and made comfortable for the chick, for the eaglet. When it's time for the eaglet to leave, the eagle ruffles up the nest, so it's very prickly and uncomfortable. And it's no more fun. It's not comfortable anymore, and that's when the eaglets will actually finally take flight and leave the nest. But we don't do that. Not in North America, not for most of us who are middle class or affluent. We don't make it, we make it so easy for them to stay that they stay and they don't mature. We drive them everywhere. Why would they go spend their money on a car? They don't mind if you buy them a car and spend your money insuring it, but they don't want to spend the money on their own car. Why would you do that? The nest is a wonderful place. It's comfortable, right?
So I hear you speaking to the whole helicoptering thing a little bit.
Absolutely. So think about this.
I want to stand up for myself first a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I think too that has to be balanced with when I have conversations with other moms, and we all have kids about this age, we also are trying to be sensitive and recognizing the fact that the environment seems more competitive for kids to get into post-secondary education or to find a job, or housing's expensive, all those types of things. So you kind of feel like by helicoptering them a little bit and setting them up for the best chances of success to get good training so that they can go out and be independent, that you're actually helping them out. But that's not the case. It's not balanced.
Okay.
Okay, but
I mean,
that's where we're coming from.
Right. And there is something to that, but you've just simply decided that you're going to take more responsibility for their future than they are, at least until a certain age. Right. And so what's happened is that keeps them stalled, really, you know. And so you have to have wisdom. This, by the way, this is not a one size fits all. We recognize every child is unique. Their journey is unique. I'm not suggesting, but I'm just giving you some broad questions and directives in terms of how I understand that we got here. So what we have is when I was a kid, my generation, this was pretty consistent. We'd get home from school and our parents are all shushing us out of the house, and they'll call us for supper.
Same with mine. Yeah.
And so we would wander a 4 or 5 block radius where our friends were. And I have no idea how we heard our moms calling us for dinner, but we would come home for dinner and then they would shush us out again. And I'm talking winter or summer. You know, so we were very comfortable doing our own thing, creating our own fun, creating our own relationships. Okay. And again, my generation has lots of challenges and a lot of things that we did that weren't helpful. Today, and at least when I raise my children, and I see it even in my grandchildren, that the kids are picked up from school, brought home. Mm-hmm. You go to your room, do your homework, and then we'll call you for supper. And then you have supper, and then you know what? Rarely do they venture out to go hang out with their friends because they want you to drive them, and you may or may not want to drive, right?
Or you're already busy driving them to lessons and sports and whatever.
So I'll come to that. So you have this bubble, this controlled environment where you are always, as the mom or the dad, are always in charge. Always in charge. You're in charge of when they eat, how they eat, where they eat, what they eat, and then you take them in the morning. You take them to a school and you hand them over to another parent, another adult. Mm-hmm. And that teacher will now tell them what to think, how to think, and when to think. And then that teacher hands them off to another adult and this is grade 1. Okay, we're still in grade 1. Repeat that process thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Then all of a sudden the students know when they walk into that environment, they don't have to make a decision. Everything's going to be pre-chewed, prepared.
It's scaffolded too, because there's a defined path of how to do what somebody's asking you to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no troubleshooting.
Yep. Right. There's no creative thinking. There's no decision making outside of that. Right. And I recognize this is simplifying, but I'm trying to create an understanding that do that for 12 or 13 or 14 years as a student. And all you know is that the outcome is to get a high mark. That's the objective. The teacher told me this is how you do that. So if I do that and I get the high mark, then I win. And everybody in that culture and that construct celebrates me, right? Whereas, and then it actually gets even worse. So you wonder why they're stalled. They're stalled because we do everything for them. So what I used to do is I drive them to school. I did everything I just have said that I'm suggesting that others do. But we bring them home for supper, and then we will put them in the car, and we take them to another adult who is now called a soccer coach. And then the soccer coach tells them how to kick the ball, where to kick the ball, how to run. And then it gives them back to us, and we take them back home, and then we put them in bed, and then we wake them up. We take them to that other adult who teaches them. And then on Sundays, then we take them to church, and we hand them over to a Sunday school teacher. We take them to the synagogue, and we hand them over to a leader and we're always handing them over, and they say, no, just do what they say, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've taken away their strength, one controlled moment after a time. Every time we make decisions for them, In so many ways, we take away their strength, their power, their maturity. And so that's one of the ways that I think we have robbed our kids of their ability to grow up quickly or more quickly. The other is we buy everything for them, right? When you look at the average kid in university, they're driving mom and dad's car. Well, you know what? They're living in mom and dad's house, or mom and dad are helping out with, the rent or staying in a dorm. And again, I realize I'm creating big, broad swaths, but for the sake of the argument, for so many ways, they look and act in university exactly the way my generation looked in high school. Because, I lived at home with my parents. And I ended up I bought my own car, my own truck. But if I ever needed help making an insurance payment, I could borrow money from my folks, and we could get through all of that. But again, and the other thing is, many of them, at least even from like Vancouver, the students that are coming from bigger cities, don't even have licenses because they don't need them, and they don't really even want the responsibility of them. Okay. Yeah. So you've got helicopter parents, and you've got parents that are actually fundamentally paying for everything that these kids need or want. And the kids have very little buy-in or skin in the game when it comes to, all the things that they have and all the things that they're accomplishing. And by the way, post-secondary education feels exactly like, their high school experience, their junior high experience, in terms of being handed over to an adult who tells you what to learn, how to learn it, and then and if you do everything really well, we'll give you a graduation cap, and we'll celebrate you, and then we release you into the wild
with no skills,
and you end up being celebrated in the institution and sitting out my window, bawling your eyes out because you're terrified of it out here.
So to use your term, we're building one-trick ponies.
We're building, yeah.
They can do school, full stop.
Yeah. So then let me get into relationship now, okay? If you take somebody and socially, that now this has way more to do with social media and the lack of social connection. If what I described was somewhat true about, from the time you're in kind of grade 5, grade 6, go to your room, we'll make supper. And then in junior high, when all of a sudden, to an average 13-year-old, her peers have more power than parents in her eyes or his eyes. And so they're constantly fighting to get with their peers, but they don't have a car, they can't drive yet. So how do they connect it via social media? And so this personal relationship with a living human being that you are talking to, not virtually, but standing in front of, this is a new trick. That's a whole new game. And then being responsible in that relationship. And then you give somebody with that, if 21 is the new 14, then give them the right to drink and smoke pot and have relationship. And what you have is a disaster. Not always, but the potential is there. So I think we have created a opportunity or a scenario for them to fail.
So when you talk about robbing them of things, you're getting at robbing them of the opportunity to make decisions about how to fail, about how to navigate person-to-person relationships. What else? What else are we robbing them of? Learning how to work hard or navigate work environments, or?
Yeah, delayed gratification. You want those earbuds? You pay for them, but I don't have a job. Well, go get one. But I've got school. Figure it out. You're a smart kid. And do you understand? Instead, what do? I'll buy them for you. I'll get them on Amazon. It's cheaper. There, solved the problem. In so many ways, we've taken away their ability to struggle away from them, and it's not helping them at all.
I've heard
and
a
we
lot
take
of
it.
friends legitimize that by saying, but they're such good kids. They're doing well at school, right? This is the story the
Mhm.
parents tell themselves.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. That's a good point.
yeah.
Because we're not talking about lazy kids. We're just we never gave them the opportunity to go and get that when they were younger, to go to work, to go do whatever you have to do to pay for some of your own crap, right?
Mhm.
Instead, we just keep giving it to them. And so my point is this: I think to the degree that we enable our children to not have any skin in the game, whether it's something you're buying them, whether it's uh, any skin in the game as it relates to what they're owning, that kind of thing. I think we are, the short term gratification actually on our part, does nothing to help them even in the long run. And their short term gratification for getting that thing that they didn't have to buy ends up in the long run just stalling them longer.
So what can we do?
So this is what I have a couple thoughts, and I know I've painted a kind of a gloomy picture, and I know your kids are wonderful, and I know they're going to be fine in the long run, and I know all that, but I
I do
just,
too, and I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit and exaggerating a little bit for the sake of the argument. Following your lead on that?
okay.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things. You let them fail, and you know what? Let them try a sport that they suck at. And then point them to something else. Let them fail. Let them raise the money to buy their first bike, their first, like give them some skin in the game, right? Give them permission. Now this is a tricky one where they're building relationships. I still think you have to be a responsible parent to go, okay, are those kids are building relationships safe and all of that, but create opportunities for them to grow in their sphere of people that they're hanging out with. So I don't know what that looks like. Go on a trip, introduce them to some other people in your life. Find people that are different than them and try to create that. So I think just giving them a social world that is bigger than, us four and no more. One of the things that I think would be very helpful is if you're in university, and I hope that, again, I can tell some are just going to bristle at this. A gap year is not a bad thing. A gap year after high school to work and find out how hard it is to make
Money
money
and how
on
expensive things are.
just
Yeah.
slightly above a minimum wage. Go work, get blisters, go work, find out what a work culture looks like. I worked construction while I was in high school, and I worked out of high school, and man, that was a dog eat dog world. It was a hard world, but there was lots of camaraderie. You know what? You had to earn respect on a construction site. Those were all really valuable lessons. And so a gap year or two is not going to kill your kid. In fact, they will probably help them settle in themselves. When I go back to university, and I'll be a little bit clearer on who I am.
Yeah.
Who I am. The big thing is, who am I? That's what they have to figure out, right? And so you can help them with that. I'll tell you tools like Strength Finders 2.0. If they're 19, 20 years old, sometimes those critical tools are so powerful in affirming to them, this is what I'm really good at. And so maybe I can learn to lean into this, right?
Let's tell the audience a little bit more about what Strength Finders is and what it can do for a young person.
Strength Finders is the Gallup people developed it. It will identify. You go online, you answer 177 questions. It's measuring intuitive response, and it identifies out of 34 strengths 5 things that you do in the level that of your strengths. 5 things you do at a near genius level, with just very naturally.
So
And it gives you
who you are, how you're built, how you're wired? Is that what you're getting at?
Yes. Yeah. The strengths are identifying kind of what makes you alive, what makes you happy, what you do with excellence, quite casually, quite naturally. And it'll print out a one-page descriptor of each of those 5 strengths. You can also get the results from all 34 strengths. It uses 4 primary categories. There's a thinking theme, influencing theme, achieving theme. So, high achiever, like, are the worker bees, or the people with great amount of responsibility, and then the relator themes. And so it matches your strengths with a theme, and it creates a really, really awesome, like, a portrait of kind of your inherent strength.
So different than other personal inventory tools. Myers-Briggs is an old one that most people are familiar with. This isn't the same in that it's giving the kid an opportunity to understand what they're just naturally good at or
Right.
enjoy. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's both things that you're good at and things you enjoy doing. And then our team has been trained to facilitate the findings, the results of that. And that is usually just a really, really an awesome experience. Something that I've had people say to me, that I've had the results on my desk for 10 years, because that's such an inspiring reminder of my beauty, of who I am. And so
I can echo that, because I have our family's strengths taped to my fridge, and it's not only great for me to be reminded of mine and to be reminded of my others, but it's also good for my marriage, because it
Right.
also helps you understand why people do what they do and why they do it the way they do it.
And if some of your viewers want to know more about that, they can email you, and we can we can facilitate that wherever you are via Zoom, some of those results. And I promise you, like, it's great as a parent to know what your kids' strengths are, because some of those things you think that's what makes them annoying. It's just that with maturity, the strengths become more and more productive, more and more life-giving. And sometimes you've got the strength, but you don't know, when you're immature and you don't know how to use it. At least this way you can become very intentional. Okay, oh, that's my strength. Now, how am I going to grow in that? And as a parent, you see that, and you can coach them along.
I've seen you in action with this, and you also use it the flip side way, in that I've heard you say to somebody, now that's one of the reason why you're doing this thing, that they're coming to see you from a point of view that's a problem, or it's getting in the way of their life, or it's causing them stress, or whatever it is. You say, look, that's a strength. You have to learn how to control it or manage it.
Right.
So it also allows you to have conversations around some of the stuff that's not working.
Right.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. So the other one is encourage independence. If your kid, it's interesting. My granddaughter, who is 8 this year, she has wanted to have a lemonade stand. All winter long, she's talking about having a lemonade stand. And she was over at the house, and just down the street, they were doing some construction. They were building like 14 houses. And it was a really hot day in August. The framers were all going, and she kept bothering us that she wanted to do this lemonade stand. And I just thought, you're such a little kid. It's a dangerous construction site. No, you shouldn't be there. Let's come in the house. Let's watch TV or something. Look at this. I'm doing the same thing. But her mom just really fosters her independence and her kind of little entrepreneurial spirit. And so her mom got a table and a sign, and my granddaughter wrote the sign, and I think my wife and my daughter-in-law did the lemonade, and they got the ice. And then my little granddaughter, she goes and puts this flowery dress on. I mean, she's just adorable. Like, you can't resist that. And then she goes out to the construction site and begins hollering at the construction guys, lemonade. And they're small glasses, and she's charging $1. I'm thinking, that's a ripoff. It's a buck, you know. And she goes, you know, best lemonade on the block. What's the only lemonade on the block, right? And wouldn't you know it, they start coming down out of the construction site and they're lined up on the road getting lemonade from, and you know something, we would have robbed her of $75 in profit, and an incredible experience. And so she, after an hour, she made $75. She was tired of selling lemonade, right? So I said, well, how much do you have left? And then her mom said, why don't you go and take these glasses to the guys that are working on the ground here, and offer them a free glass and say, thank you for your business today. And so here this little gal's doing stuff. And I'm thinking, if we steal those moments from them again and again and again, when will they learn to take risks? And when will they learn they're really good at charming people? When will they learn that? And so my point here is that when they're younger, give them a shot at being independent. Give them a shot at doing something that's bigger than they are. Give them the shot at it, you know what, and see what they learn from, and then celebrate that with them. And I think those little steps, the more freedom they give them, the more independence we give them, the more opportunity for them to make decisions without us necessarily trumping their decisions all the time. I think that will create a generation, or make room for a generation to thrive.
Great advice, Ed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we'll stop it there for today. We have lots of opportunities in the future to talk more about this and other topics. So I want to thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to take all these ideas home with me tonight, moving forward, to try to do a better job of helping my kids grow up in a way that's going to be helpful to them. So
you know what might be a good idea for everybody listening is these are recorded. Take this conversation to your 20-year-old or your 17-year-old and ask them what they think of it. And what if they say, "What, that guy's full of crap. He doesn't know what he's talking about." Now you have a great conversation on your hand. So then if he's wrong, what is it? This would be a great conversation to have with your young adult, with your adolescent, with your, you know, your 16, 15, probably 17, 18 and up young adult. Let the conversation go wherever it is. You just don't try to control it. Let it go where it goes, and let it be an amazing opportunity for you to connect with your kids.
Perfect. I will do that. They'll be mortified that I spoke about them on TV, but I'll do it. Thank you. Great, Ed.
Right.
Well, thanks to everybody who's listening and watching for joining us. Stay tuned for more great shows every Tuesdays and Thursdays on Instagram and Facebook. Learn more about our charity at thirdspacecanada.org, and hope to see you all again sometime soon. Thanks again. Bye, Ed. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Jody.
Take care.